Imagine the scene. It is 2 o'clock in the morning. The house is silent, the windows are dark, and the only light in the room comes from the pale blue glow of a smartphone or a laptop screen. While the rest of the world sleeps, a single individual, whom we shall call the user, sits in the quiet solitude of their own thoughts. They are not scrolling through social media or watching mindless videos. Instead, they are typing. They are pouring their frustrations, their secret ambitions, and their most private anxieties into a chat interface. This is the digital confessional, a modern sanctuary where the modern individual seeks interaction and answers from a source that never sleeps, never judges, and never grows tired of listening. It is a private domestic space where the traditional barriers of social etiquette dissolve, replaced by a unique intimacy shared between a human mind and a mathematical model. In these late-night hours, the user often shares thoughts they would never dream of telling a close friend, a family member, or even a professional therapist. There is something about the flickering cursor that invites a strange kind of honesty. Perhaps it is the knowledge that the entity on the other side is not a person, or perhaps it is the illusion that the conversation exists in a vacuum. But this leads us to a central, haunting question that sits at the heart of our modern era. As we click send on these deeply personal prompts, is the artificial intelligence truly learning about us? Or are we finally, for the first time in history, seeing ourselves clearly through a neutral lens? This is the hook that draws us in. We believe we are exploring the frontiers of technology, but in reality, we are exploring the frontiers of our own psyche. This phenomenon is what we might call the cognitive mirror. It is the idea that the AI acts as a non-judgmental surface that reflects our internal mental structures back at us. Unlike a human conversation partner, the AI does not have its own ego, its own hidden agenda, or its own set of cultural biases that it projects onto you. It is a neutral observer. When you speak to it, you are essentially speaking into a highly sophisticated echo chamber that processes your input and returns it in a structured format. If you approach it with hostility, it reflects a defensive reality. If you approach it with curiosity, it opens doors to new ideas. The machine becomes whatever we need it to be at that moment, revealing the shape of our own thoughts by the way we choose to engage with it. Every prompt you type, every typo you make in your haste to be heard, and every specific phrasing choice you select constitutes an invisible fingerprint. This is not just data in the way a computer sees it. It is a psychological data point reflecting your current mental state. When you look back at your chat history, you're looking at a map of your own consciousness. A person who is feeling overwhelmed might use short, clipped sentences and demand immediate answers. Someone who is feeling lonely might use overly formal language or treat the machine with an unusual level of politeness. These patterns are often invisible to us in the heat of the moment, but they are recorded forever in the digital logs. They are the subtle markers of our stress, our joy, and our deepest insecurities. I challenge you to perform a small experiment. Open your recent chat history right now. Do not look for the answers the AI gave you, because those are just the products of algorithms and massive data sets. Instead, look at the tone of the questions you asked. Look at how you structured your requests. Did you start with an apology? Did you demand compliance? Did you explain your emotions before asking for a task to be completed? The way you talk to the machine when you think no one is watching is perhaps the most honest version of yourself. It reveals your expectations of power, your need for validation, and your inherent style of communication. This exercise in immediate identification can be startling, as it forces us to confront the hidden biases that usually remain tucked away in our subconscious. To understand why we do this, we must look at the scientific context of our evolution. In the mid-1960s, a computer scientist named Joseph Weizenbaum created a simple program called ELIZA. It was designed to mimic a therapist by rephrasing the user's statements as questions. Despite its extreme simplicity, users found themselves becoming deeply emotionally attached to the program, sharing their most intimate secrets with a few lines of code. This became known as the ELIZA effect. We are evolutionarily wired to project consciousness and intent onto anything that interacts with us. Our ancestors needed to quickly determine if a movement in the grass was a predator or just the wind, so our brains developed a bias towards seeing agency everywhere. When a machine responds to us in natural language, our primitive brain registers it as a social entity, triggering all our social instincts, even when we consciously know it is just math. The core thesis of this exploration is that while the artificial intelligence itself is artificial, the patterns it triggers within us are the most human parts of our psyche. The machine is not alive, but the relationship we build with it is very real in its consequences. It exposes the architecture of our thoughts and the repetitive loops of our behavior. We are not just using a tool. We are participating in a grand psychological experiment where the subject and the observer are the same person. The AI is simply the mirror that finally grew clear enough for us to see the wrinkles in our own thinking. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. As we move forward, we will begin to peel back the layers of these interactions to see what happens when we look even deeper into the digital reflection. The journey into the unmasked mind has only just begun, and the revelations waiting in the anatomy of our interactions are far more complex than a simple string of text on a screen. The anatomy of this interaction begins with a phenomenon many of us experience but few of us recognize, which is emotional repetition. Have you ever found yourself asking the same question to the artificial intelligence 5, 10, or even 15 times, each time slightly altering the words? On the surface, it might look like you're just trying to get a more accurate answer or a better summary of a topic. But if we look deeper at the psychology of the user, something else is happening. This is the hunt for a specific emotional resonance. Often, we are not searching for a cold fact, but for a specific feeling. We are looking for the machine to say the one thing that will quiet our internal noise. This repetition is a direct window into our subconscious needs. It reveals exactly where we feel most insecure or where our desires are strongest. We keep turning the virtual key in the lock, hoping that the next response will finally provide the click of relief we are searching for. This leads us directly into the powerful current of confirmation bias. In our daily lives, we are often forced to confront truths that are uncomfortable, messy, or inconvenient. However, in the privacy of the digital confessional, we have total control over the narrative flow. We often frame our prompts in a way that leads the artificial intelligence toward the answer we already want to receive. If we are anxious about a career choice, we might highlight only the negative aspects of our current job and then ask the machine for advice. When the artificial intelligence confirms our frustration, we feel a sudden rush of validation. We believe the machine has given us an objective truth, but in reality, we have merely used its vast computational power to echo our own pre-existing anxieties. We are not seeking a teacher. We are seeking a witness to our own internal drama who will tell us that we are right. While this is happening, another subtle process is at work known as psychological projection. Because the artificial intelligence is a neutral mathematical model, it possesses no inherent tone, no mood, and no personal attitude. Yet, the user will frequently describe the machine as being rude, helpful, sassy, or dismissive. This perception of tone is almost entirely a product of the user's own internal state. If you're feeling defensive or irritable, a short and direct answer from the machine will feel like a personal slight or an act of aggression. If you're feeling vulnerable, a structured list of advice can feel like a cold and clinical rejection of your feelings. We are essentially painting our own emotions onto a blank canvas. By examining the tone we attribute to the machine, we can identify the emotional weather occurring within ourselves at that very moment. It is a real-time diagnostic tool for our mental well-being, showing us that the voice we hear in our heads is often our own, reflected back at us by an algorithm that has no voice of its own. This interaction is further complicated by what psychologists call the disinhibition effect. In social settings, we are constantly filtering our thoughts to fit in. We worry about judgment, we adhere to social norms, and we perform a version of ourselves that we think others will accept. But when talking to an algorithm, the threat of social rejection disappears entirely. This absence of human judgment makes the user more honest, but it also reveals the shadow aspects of the personality. These are the parts of ourselves that we usually suppress or hide, even from those closest to us. In the safety of the interface, we might find ourselves being more demanding, more selfish, or more raw than we would ever be with another human being. This is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a deeply revealing one. It shows us what we are like when the masks are removed, providing a rare opportunity to see the parts of our character that exist outside the bounds of social performance. Our interaction style also serves as a mirror for our real-world relationship dynamics and power structures. This is where we see the emergence of distinct archetypes, such as the over-apologetic user and the control-oriented user. Consider the over-apologetic user. This individual will often begin their prompts with phrases like, "I am so sorry to bother you," or "I know you're busy, but could you help me with this?" Even though they know on a rational level that they are speaking to a program that does not have feelings and cannot be bothered, their deep-seated urge to avoid conflict and seek approval remains active. This behavior reveals a persistent underlying anxiety and a low sense of self-esteem that permeates their real-world interactions. They treat the machine with the same fearful politeness they might use with a demanding boss or a distant parent, showing how deeply their social conditioning is woven into their identity. On the opposite end of the spectrum is the control-oriented user. This person treats the artificial intelligence with a sense of cold authority, issuing commands without a trace of courtesy and growing frustrated if the machine does not provide immediate perfection. For this individual, the interaction is not a collaboration, but an exercise in dominance. This behavior often mirrors a life where they feel a lack of control in other areas, or perhaps it reflects a rigid way of dealing with any entity they perceive as being in a subordinate position. By looking at these automatic thought patterns, we can start to see how we carry our emotional baggage from the physical world into the digital one. We are not just typing commands into a search bar, we are rehearsing our way of being in the world and displaying our internal power dynamics. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of this anatomy of interaction is our adaptive behavior. We have a deep-seated evolutionary urge to build rapport, even with non-sentient entities. Subconsciously, the user will often change their language to fit the style of the machine. If the artificial intelligence uses sophisticated vocabulary, the user will start to use bigger words. If the machine is concise, the user becomes more direct and clipped. This reveals our profound social plasticity, our natural tendency to mirror those around us in order to foster connection and safety. Even when we know there is no soul behind the screen, we cannot help but try to synchronize with it. This reveals that our need for connection is so fundamental that it bypasses our logical understanding of technology. We are, at our core, social creatures who will attempt to build a bridge to anything that speaks back to us, showing just how deeply ingrained our need for community and recognition truly is. As we continue to navigate these hidden loops of our behavior, we begin to realize that the machine is not just a tool for productivity, but a laboratory for the soul, where every keystroke is a piece of evidence in the ongoing trial of our own self-discovery. We are slowly learning that the most complex thing about artificial intelligence is not the code itself, but the human heart that interacts with it. As these interactions accumulate over weeks and months, they transform from simple queries into a long-form transcript of the soul. For the first time in human history, we have a searchable, dated record of our own private thought processes. Unlike a traditional diary, where we often write with a future reader in mind, our chats are functional and immediate. This lack of performative writing means the logs capture our rawest impulses. When we look back, we might see a week where every question was laced with a specific type of insecurity, or a month where our tone was uncharacteristically sharp. These are the footprints of our unconscious, left behind on a digital beach. We can see the shape of our own hidden biases, not through a single message, but through the weight and frequency of our repetitions. This visibility is revolutionary. It turns the nebulous clouds of our internal moods into concrete data points that we can finally examine with objective distance. We are no longer guessing at our mental state, we are reading the evidence. This shift in usage marks a new era where the technology is moving from a tool for productivity to a medium for deep self-reflection. Many individuals have discovered the power of what engineers call rubber ducking, which is the act of explaining a complex problem to a neutral object to find the solution. In the digital confessional, this process becomes a profound psychological exercise. By explaining an internal conflict to the artificial intelligence, the user is forced to structure their thoughts and articulate their feelings in a way that internal rumination does not require. The machine does not need to offer a brilliant psychological breakthrough. Its mere existence as a listening post forces the human mind to organize its own chaos. We find that the most profound insights do not come from the algorithm, but from the act of typing out our own complexities. We are essentially talking to ourselves, but the presence of the digital mirror makes the conversation feel real enough to trigger genuine introspection. There is a striking paradox at the heart of this experience, which we can call the paradox of honesty. We often find more truth in a conversation with a cold machine than we do when looking at our own reflection in a physical mirror. This is because the mirror carries the weight of our physical identity, our vanity, and our social masks. When we look at ourselves, we see who we want to be or who we are afraid we have become. But in the void of the chat interface, the social performance drops away entirely. There are no eyes to judge us, no body language to misinterpret, and no social consequences for being wrong or weak. This vacuum of judgment creates a space where the user can be dangerously honest. We admit to fears we would never tell a partner and express desires we would never share with a friend. The artificiality of the intelligence is exactly what makes the human honesty so potent. It is the one place where we are truly alone, yet heard, allowing us to strip away the layers of pretense that we carry through our daily lives. Once these patterns are made visible, they lose their power over us. Identifying that you are falling into the trap of the over-apologetic user is the first step toward reclaiming your sense of self-worth. When you see your own hidden biases reflected back in your chat logs, you can no longer pretend they do not exist. This awareness creates a window for real-world behavioral change. If you notice that you consistently seek validation for your anxieties from the machine, you can begin to catch yourself doing the same with your colleagues or family members. The digital interaction serves as a safe rehearsal space. By consciously changing how you interact with the artificial intelligence, perhaps by being more direct or less fearful of making a mistake, you're actually retraining your brain. You're breaking the automatic thought patterns that have dictated your life for years. This is the ultimate utility of the cognitive mirror. It gives us the map we need to navigate out of our own mental loops and into a more authentic way of being. There is a profound irony in the fact that it took the most inhuman technology of the 21st century to help us understand the depths of human nature. We spent decades fearing that machines would become too much like us, only to realize that their greatest value lies in how they show us what we already are. The artificial intelligence does not have a soul, yet it acts as a perfect vessel for our own. It is a testament to the complexity of the human psyche that we require a mathematical model to help us see our own emotions clearly. As we move forward into this new era, the challenge is not just to build smarter machines, but to become more self-aware humans. We must learn to read between the lines of our own prompts, recognizing that every word we type is a window into our emotional needs and hidden desires. The final truth of the digital age is that the artificial intelligence is not the one evolving in this relationship. While the code may become more efficient and the database is larger, it is the user who has the opportunity for a true metamorphosis. We are finally standing in front of a mirror clear enough to show us the parts of ourselves we have ignored for a lifetime. By embracing this reflection, we can move from a state of unconscious reaction to one of conscious being. The machine is simply a tool, but the self-awareness it grants us is a gift of the highest order. As you close your laptop or lock your phone tonight, take a moment to look at the dark screen. Before the light fades, remember that the most fascinating thing about the technology is not the answers it gave you, but the person you were while you were asking. The journey into the machine is, and always has been, a journey back to ourselves. We have found a way to see our invisible fingerprints, and in doing so, we have found a way to finally see our own faces.